Hi, I'm Karen. We're here at Mondavilla Sewing Center, and today we're talking about the Bernette B77. In this video, I'm going to show you some of the basic operations. Now, most of the time when you sit down at your sewing machine, you just want to be able to sew a straight line or maybe do some zigzag. There's a lot more that you can do with this machine, but I'm going to get you started on some of those basic things. So to start off with, remember this does not have a presser lifter lever here. So you have a button on the front. You also have this wonderful presser lifter bar that once you have that in there, all you need to do is move it with your knee and it lowers the foot. To lift it up, push it to the side. As soon as you let go with your knee, it puts it right back down. But you can also start sewing with the presser foot up. Just press on your pedal and it puts the foot down. Now notice it gives us a little bit of a locking stitch right at the beginning until we are done. Then we can do our locking stitch at the end like that. And you've got your option of doing your cutter button right here, or you can just simply lift your presser foot. Well, here, lift the needle, lift the presser foot, and cut your threads like that. Now we have this machine set so that the needle is going to stop in the down position. You can also set it so it stops in the up position like that. There's another setting that I really like, and that's in the settings with the foot control. You can press on the back of the pedal and that will cut your stitches. So I'm going to show you just basically sewing, getting started here. Here we go. Give us our little locking stitch, which by the way, also in settings, you can turn that off too. So if I'm at the end of my sewing and I've just stopped here and I want to do a back stitch, I can press my back stitch button and it gives you the regular back stitch that you're used to doing. Press my cutter button down there on the foot control, and there we go. Now another really nice stitch is this one here. It's going to give you a back stitch at the beginning, and then I'll show you how to do the back stitch at the end. So let's start sewing. Now watch what it does. It goes forward, goes back. I didn't have to press any back stitch button. Get to where I want to be. See what's blinking right here? That means press this button and then press your foot control. And then it stops. Now remember to leave your foot down on the pedal until it's done making that. Now it's got that back stitch already built in. It's a really convenient stitch to have when you're garment sewing. Gives you a nice, secure back stitch. And then of course you've got your zigzag right here. Now this is the default for zigzag. You can make it wider or longer depending on what you are zigzagging. Say you've got some loosely woven fabric, you may want to have a wider and longer zigzag. The yellow here means it's not in default. To put it back into default, really easy. Push this clear button and it puts that stitch back into the default. If on the other hand you wanted to change that to make it wider and longer, and then you go to say your stitch length, say you're hemming several pairs of jeans and you've got your stitch length a little bit longer, like that. You can switch back and forth between these two stitches and it keeps those settings. If you want to, again, if you want to go back to the default for that stitch, just push clear and it's right back to default again. So that's a nice feature to have if you're switching between stitches. It's a kind of a Bernette feature. It's really handy. Okay, so to let you know a little bit more about what's going on this screen, you have your different kinds of stitches, and here we're in the utility stitches, three pages of those of utility and mending stitches. Here we have our decorative stitches, and there's folders with lots of different kinds of stitches, like pictorial stitches, and this is an example of your satin stitches. Down here we have lettering. You have your block letters, your frame letters, and your script letters. And in each of these you have, well, let's just choose this one here. You can expand this and see more of what's in there. You can always expand these In whatever category you have, if you have this little arrow here, you can see more of what's on there. Okay, so let's close that. Down here you have your buttonholes, and your buttonholes, lots of different kinds of buttonholes as well as eyelets. Down here we have our quilting stitches. Now these are quilting stitches both for piecing and for decorative quilting, like your applique or your crazy quilt stitches that you would put to seal the edges of patches that are raw edge. Those are real fun. Down here we have your memory, so you can put things into memory and take things out of memory. So let's go back up here. And then you have your settings button, your stitch advisor for like the different kinds of stitches that are different kinds of fabric that you're using and different stitches. It advises you what kind of needle, what kind of thread, etc. And then let's get out of that. And this is the eco mode. Now the eco mode is really nice for if you are, so you have to go answer the door, answer the phone or whatever, get a cup of coffee. Before you leave your machine, press that. Notice it turns off the light, turns off everything, makes it so that you cannot sew or push your needle down. It's a real nice safety feature if you have little kids in the house. To get your machine to wake back up, just press the middle of that and it comes right back on. And then the clear button, I already showed you about that. Okay, on this side we have the needle tension, needle thread tension. So you don't have a dial here. Instead, you have this little icon here. So you can make it a tighter tension or a looser tension depending on what you want to do. To get back to default, just touch that little icon with a yellow frame around it. Here we have the type of needle. Now, here's a single needle. It can be any, like a ballpoint or a sharp or whatever. But here we have for twin needle of different widths, or a wing needle, and that's for doing special decorative sewing. So depending on what needle you're using, for instance, if I had a twin needle here and I chose zigzag, it's not going to allow me to do a zigzag any wider than 4. I can do it narrower, that's okay. But the twin needle, that setting protects the needle from breaking or hitting the needle plate. That's what the purpose of having that. And different twin needles are different widths apart. That's why you can select those different ones. Okay, so we're going to go back to regular. This one here is a different presser foot. So, for instance, if I'm sewing a regular straight stitch, this will show me the presser feet that I can use for that stitch. So here's your regular all-purpose foot, the DA foot. And by the way, whenever you see D on that means that you can use the dual feed foot or dual feed feature with this machine. So the ones with a yellow with a star in it means that you can also use those feet with that particular stitch that you have selected. So it'll be different for different stitches. Okay, down here is a presser foot pressure. Now, for default, it's at 40, but you can make it more pressure or less pressure. The reason why you might want to change that is, say, for instance, you have a knit that does not have good stretch recovery. It tends to get wavy as you're sewing it. Well, you may want to make it a little bit less. Again, to put it back to default, when it has this yellow frame, just touch in the middle, it puts it right back to default. Okay, then down here, this button is just like this one up here. But what this does is it shows you which needle plate you have on here. Now, only the zigzag needle plate comes with this, but you can purchase an additional single hole needle plate. And that's very helpful for if you have fabric that tends to get pushed down into this nice wide zigzag needle hole as you're sewing. So it'll, when you're using the single hole needle plate, it'll kind of keep things from getting stuck and it'll help it flow through nice and smoothly. So that is the basic what's going on here. We can get into settings more later, and okay, let me just show you briefly about what some of these things are here. This means that it's going to give you that little locking stitch at the beginning. You can go into settings and take that out. And then of course you'd have to do, if you want to lock your stitch, do either this button or your reverse button at the beginning. And if you had that removed in settings, it would not show up right here. This button here is if you wanted to do a sequence of stitches, or a combination of stitches. So to notice you've got a couple straight stitches right here. If I went into decorative stitches and chose, say, a snowflake, okay, now I've got that. When you expand it, now you can see what's the different stitches you have here. So this is also useful for lettering. You can move this back and forth, check your lettering. If you need to delete a specific stitch, the one that's highlighted, you push your delete button and it's gone. And then, of course, you can push that to close that up again. So to get back into regular sewing, how do we do that? First of all, let's get out of combination and let's get back into regular sewing. That stitch is already, the one that's highlighted is the one that's chosen. I've noticed that when you are choosing a particular, like when you go back to this, it goes automatically to straight stitch, which is a really handy feature too. Okay, so that's your basic operations on your machine. Of course, you can move your stitch position this way, putting it back to default, go like that, or push your clear button. Stitch width, stitch length, which also can be adjusted with a slider up here if you should choose to do that. Check out some of our other videos. We have other videos on this machine too, as well as other videos on other machines here at Montevilla, as well as sewing techniques. So if this video has been helpful to you, give us a thumbs up. And if you have comments or questions, you can leave those in the area down below. So thanks for watching. See you later. Bye.